Good afternoon, everyone. Before I actually introduce our next speaker for this track, let me just make a quick announcement. Mr. Alex Lim, Mr. Ang Han Chin, Fauzan Mohammed, Mr. Gregorio Atienza, Mr. Hong Yixia, and Mr. Dimitrij Diktek. If you're here after this track, kindly make your way to the registration counter. Thank you. Now allow me to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Mr. Gareth Davis, the Manager of Security Practice, Network Security Solutions, MSc Sdn Bhd. Mr. Gareth Davis is a security professional working currently for NSS MSc Sdn Bhd, a Malaysian-based information security company, and holds a degree in software engineering from Liverpool, UK. Also the co-founder of a large online security community with over 15,000 members and one of the older UK-based underground sites. Currently involved in practical application of penetration testing and vulnerability techniques, molding and delivering a next-generation penetration testing certification and various other interesting projects. His knowledge encompasses digital forensics, Linux attack defense, Windows security, attack and penetration, secure network topology, and open source solutions. And his presentation today will be on advanced information gathering, also known as Google hacking. Let's welcome together Mr. Gareth Davis.
Okay, thank you. I hope you're not too sleepy after lunch. As I was introduced, today we'll be talking about advanced information gathering. The media name for this now is Google hacking, because a lot of it revolves around the search engine Google. So an outline of the talk today will be sort of introduction to information gathering itself, its purpose, what it's used for, some examples of the things you can harvest using information gathering techniques, the power of the modern search engines, especially Google, how to utilize Google fully, the Google API and some applications utilizing the Google APIs. After that, we'll do some examples of some juicy Google hacks which expose like passwords, confidential information. I actually put a live presentation in, but yesterday the internet wasn't working here, so I took it out, but I just checked and it's working. So at the end, perhaps I'll do a demonstration of some of these. And then at the end, some recommendations which can protect your company against these kind of attacks. So information gathering itself usually is the first step of any penetration test, only for black box testing. Like white box testing, you already know the network topology, the technology used, and everything about the company. During a black box test, you don't know anything. So information gathering is a very important step that allows you to more easily penetrate the network later on in the technical parts. It's very important for profiling a company, finding out what technologies they use, what weaknesses they have, if they have any confidential or sensitive information exposed on the web. Basically what it is leveraging public resources to find sensitive information. So this is stuff that they don't intend to be accessible to everyone over the internet, but it's there. It's fully utilized by the black hat community. They use all of this stuff a lot, so it's important for people to be aware that it is being used and you can't detect it, so you need to know how to prevent it. By linking together all the different pieces of information, you can build up a very complete picture of an individual, an organization, or any kind of entity. The main thing to note, as I just mentioned, is stealth. If someone's profiling you in this way or gathering information about you, there's no way to tell. They're not connecting to any of your servers or resources. It's all passive. That's why it's known as passive information gathering. Like, there's no noisy port scans, there's no enumeration, there's no password cracking. There's someone using search engines and public resources. So that's why you have to be aware. It's non-intrusive and it's passive, so there's no way to detect. So you have to be proactive in preventing this. Nowadays, the internet has a memory. It's known as Google Cache. Even if you don't want something to be on the internet and Google's cached it, it's going to be on the internet, unless you explicitly ask them to remove it. Archive.org, which is not so complete, but it holds a very long history of most websites. So if someone's put something on their site and then removed it, it might be in the Google cache, it might be in archive.org. So these are two places you have to check. If you remove something from your website for liability reasons or whatever reason, check that it's not stored anywhere else. And news groups. News groups go back the archives, I think, to around 95 or 96 and hold pretty much all the postings. We'll cover that more later. This is an example of classic information leakage. I used Hack in the Box website as an example, so I hope they don't mind. This is what's known as a DNS zone transfer. This is known as passive because it's not outside normal behavior. So basically I've set my DNS server to be the same as Hack in the Box and then done a zone transfer to myself. It shouldn't allow this, and basically it's given me all the IP addresses and subdomains for the whole. If it was a company, it would be the company. So this is one older method that shows a lot of information that's leaking out. People aren't even aware that it's happening. And especially nowadays, there's a lot of websites that allow you to utilize all these techniques in a lot more straightforward manner. So there's like DNSreports.com, which will give you a whole page, like 5-6 page report on the DNS structure of an organization or company. Whois.sc, which can do a lot of interesting lookups on domains or IP addresses. NQT.php, which you can find using Google, is network query tool. Network tools, a similar set of tools including like traceroute and ping. So you can do a lot of the active activities now using web pages, so the traffic's not actually coming from you. Then Netcraft, I'm sure most of you have seen it, lists a history of all the operating systems that web servers have been using. And then the bottom one is a web tool that enables you to check if the DNS server is vulnerable to zone transferring. So here's an example of whois.sc. Say you've got a domain, the domain has an IP address. You can actually do a reverse lookup on the IP address to find all the other domains on that IP. Whois.sc is the only tool that's able to do this. So this is actually very useful as well. This is, like I talked about earlier, when you link information together. So you start off with one domain, usually you just get an IP. But using this sort of technology, you can actually get a whole new list of domains to look at, which gives you obviously more IP addresses and more ways into the network. So this in itself is sort of the essence of hacking. Passive information gathering is about thinking outside the box, using search engines and public resources in manners they weren't intended to be used, like leveraging the maximum information out of them. An important part is linking between the information. So also, especially Google, it tends to give you a lot of results. Sometimes you'll be doing something, you get 16 or 20, 30,000 results. So in some ways it's similar to what used to be known as dumpster diving. When you go into someone's bins and pick out all their rubbish, you look for sensitive documents. This is the same sort of thing, but using the web and search engines. So the best thing to do is think outside the lines. Don't think linearly. So some of the good places to look are check job databases for the company you're profiling. Often, because they're looking for a specific employee, they'll put a lot of information into their job postings about what technologies they're using. This in itself is information disclosure. News groups, especially new technical staff, they might not want to ask their superiors questions. They can ask some quite detailed questions on Usenet, which again will reveal what technologies they're using. Sometimes you even find passwords in their posts. Company registration details, which give away physical locations and perhaps different branches. And sometimes you go to the extent you find out personal details about the employees. So if you can find their personal web page, their hobby web page, you can build a profile of certain key employees which can later be used for social engineering or password generation. So here's an example of a Usenet posting from a news group. The guy's got a question and he's basically posted the exact service packs and versions of the technologies being used within the company. So when you're profiling a company, this is the sort of thing you'll be looking for on news groups. Sometimes you'll find a whole network diagram, the network topology. It's quite common to find some interesting information, and people often overlook this. An example here of what I mentioned, the job posting. This is from Job Street. So basically they've put here all the technologies that they're using, so you don't have to fingerprint them or anything. You just look at this. They're using Windows 2000, Exchange 2000. Their hardware is Compaq. They're using BMC Patrol and Veritas Backup. So basically you've got a whole list of their technology here without actually having to touch anything at the company. So the power of search engines now is evolved greatly past what it used to be. As I mentioned, they now have memory, and the most important thing, especially for like Google hacking, is the advanced operands. So these are the characters or strings that you put before or after your queries to narrow them down. Some of them, we'll cover these more later in detail. So this is how the search engines are known. Google is the might. It's the one that returns just masses and masses and masses of results. They're not always relevant, but it does give you a lot of information. Teoma is the refine. This is the one that allows you to pinpoint specific things and specific information. And then fast search is the depth. This will allow you to locate some really obscure and hard to find information. So a lesson from this is don't be reliant on Google. The media's come to grab Google as like the one and only search engine, but when you're doing this kind of exercise, it's best to use all of them, because they all have different strengths and weaknesses. There's a very good site, searchlaw.org, which you can find out the capability of all the different search engines. So the stats there is only 3% of people use the advanced features in Google. From the front page is an advanced search, which allows you to search by date range, and then there's also explanations of all the operands and characters that you can use to refine your searches. As I said, people tend to get locked into one engine. They get used to Google, they like Google, so they just use Google exclusively. Each engine has different strengths and weaknesses, so it's important to learn to utilize all of them. As I said, searchlaw.org is a very good place. So if you're interested in seeing what each of the engines is capable of, all the advanced techniques you can use, this is a good website to look at. Even within Google itself, people often overlook the breadth of it. So as I detailed just now, there's a lot of information in Usenet, in news groups. So it used to be called Deja News. If anyone used it in the past, Google Groups took it over. So the archives go all the way back to, I think, 95. So it's the URL's groups.google.com. Then there's Google Images, which is a searchable images archive, and Google News, which aggregated news syndication. All of these resources are in some part useful when information gathering. So now I'll explain some of the advanced operators. So these are used usually when you're targeting a specific site. So this is the sort of Google hacking stuff. The site operand, this restricts your search to a specific domain or site as it's known. Then there's in title and in URL. These will look for words, keywords or strings in the title or in the URL itself. If you put all in the front, that means it will look for the whole phrase, not just a single word. And then cache will view the Google cache of the website. File type is very useful. Say when you're profiling a company, you'll especially look for like Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PDF files. Usually Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, because Microsoft stores a lot of metadata in their files. So sometimes you get a Word document, it's got the whole revision history inside, or it might have some personal details in the properties of the document. And then link will list all the links to a given site. This might give you some clues of who's partnering the company or who their industry friends are. And then related, which I don't know what algorithm it's based on, but it's Google's idea of which sites are related to the one you're looking at. And then the other operators, which I think most people are familiar with, the plus and the minus. The plus means it's essential that what you're searching for, this word is required. Minus is exclusion. So say if you're searching for something and you're getting a lot of irrelevant results, you can fine-tune it by using the minus operator. Most people don't use the next two much. The tilde, the squiggly character, this means similar to, so it'll use synonyms. So if you put tilde food, it'll look at like eating, cooking, all the related words. So you can, that's one way. If you're not getting many results, you can actually broaden your search. And then the full stop is a single letter wildcard. Usually you put it if there might be spaces or different characters separating a string. And then the quotes are used to search for an exact phrase. So say if you required an exact phrase, you'd put plus and then quote the words. So then it would guarantee to reveal that phrase. So Google actually released an API for their search engine to allow you to easily use the information stored in their databases. The API can be found google.com/APIs. It's based on WSDL and SOAP, so it's quite extensible. There's not many applications using it now, but it is quite useful. You need a key, a license key to use it, but it's free to get the key. And queries, because it's still beta, is limited to 1,000 per day. One tool using this is Sitedigger. Actually uses the Google API, so you need a license key to use the software. It's suited to targeting a specific domain or organization. It doesn't do general searches. You put in a domain and it will check like all the Google hacks on that specific site. There's around, I think, just over 100 predefined queries within the tool. It uses XML, so it's an open format. You can actually add new queries to it yourself, and it has an auto update feature for the definitions. So you can see the screenshot here. You put the URL in the text box and then just hit search, and in the bottom it will show you all of the queries which it's running through. So if you're targeting a specific site or organization, you can use this tool just to quickly check if there's any like obvious Google hacks on that site. This is a newer tool made independently by an individual. It's not made by a large company. It doesn't rely on the Google API. It actually just uses sort of web browser interface within the application and returns the data directly. It's more suited to finding general misconfiguration than searching one site. It uses XML again, which is extensible. So it was developed because the creator of this found Sitedigger too limited. It's only limited to Google because it uses Google API. But this tool is using more extensible XML, so you can actually support any engine, not just Google. So here's a screenshot of Athena. As you can see, it's got like a browser window in the bottom half of the application. At the top, you load the config file, select the search engine, and then in the second text box down, there's a whole huge list of all the Google hacks. So here, for example, I've searched for robots.txt, disallow file type.txt. Robots.txt is a file websites use to tell search engines what they do and don't want them to look at. So it's good for us to look at because then we know what they don't want us to look at. As you can see, the second site down is actually the White House, US government. So if you look inside there, there's a huge list of URLs and pages they don't want the search engines to see. There must be a reason for that, so they probably don't want us to see them either. So there's one website very famous for Google hacks. A guy I know, he's called Johnny Long. His site's johnny.ihackstuff.com. Most of the following information comes from his database. It's a community-based database, so there's a lot of people putting input in, and you can vote on the accuracy of the hacks. So one example would be searching for default server pages, which shows sloppy administration. So the first one, entitled test page for Apache, then quoted, it works. This will return all of the default installations of Apache. So that means someone that's installed Apache and not configured it, not put a website there, not done anything with it. So generally that shows the attitude. They probably haven't secured it either. It's probably just been installed and left. They might not have even intended to put it on the public internet. The second one, all entitled, using the operand Netscape fast track server. So it's the same thing, but for Netscape fast track. You can also do the same thing for this one's for IIS 5. There's a phrase you can use for IIS 4 as well. You can see this is the Apache one. So straight away it gives 94 sites with the default configuration for Apache. It used to be a lot more, but you have to change the phrase slightly now for different versions of Apache, but you can still locate a lot of default installations. There's actually quite a few queries that will return passwords, people keeping passwords in files. So the top one, index of HT password or password. This is HT passwords, the authentication mechanism used by Apache. So this can find web passwords and Apache passwords. The PASSWD, that's the Unix format password file. So you can actually find encrypted Unix passwords. The second one, all in URL admin.mdb. MDB being the access database format. So using this query, you can find databases containing lists of usernames and passwords. Config.php is a common file for PHP-based web applications. It contains usually the database name, the IP address, the username, and the password, all in plain text. And then the bottom three also user file text, password.dat. Password.dat is quite a common one, and WSFTP password file type ini. So a lot of these is using combinations of the advanced operands, so in title, in URL, file type, and quoted phrases. So example of this one is file type PWD, and then we're looking for the word service. So this returns basically it's a front page password file. So it's people using front page to edit their website, but they've actually got the password file on the website as well. So as you can see, this one returned 99 sites with the front page passwords available. So you can take that file and basically connect to the site with front page and change it however you like. In the iHackStuff database, last time I checked, there's 540 Google hacks. So they vary in effectiveness and what they return. Some of them, like, they used to return tens of thousands of pages, but now it might just be a few hundred. But they're all rated as well. So mostly the 5-star ones are most effective. What I've shown was just a few of the common examples to outline the amount of information available. So this is using a public resource. You're not connecting to the sites. In some places, it might be illegal to click on the links that you find. So if you're not sure, use the cache. Because if you use the cache, you're not actually connecting to the site. It's still a grey area in the law. Like there was one case when, I can't remember, it was one of the big financial companies. Every quarter, they published their financial reports. What somebody did is they guessed from the previous file names what the next file name would be. And they guessed the file name correctly and actually got the file before it was released, because they put it on the web server but hadn't linked to it. And there was a big court case. I don't think they decided, because it's on the public internet, it should be public, but they hadn't released it, so they shouldn't have it. So they're still arguing about it. Main thing, as I said, just try and be inventive. Play around with the queries. If you're not finding what you want, change them slightly. Look at the advanced operators. Try and narrow it down a bit. Just a few recommendations to protect against this stuff. Main one is disable directory browsing. This means when you go to a website and a directory, it won't list the files. It will say directory listing not allowed. So this is an important option to set. Don't put sensitive information in browsable directories. Even if you haven't linked to it or it's not public, if it's not passworded, then anyone can access it. It's called forcible browsing. I found out about this a long time ago, before Google hacking was popular. I was using a quite simple e-commerce application. It was using an Access database, and I noticed that the Access database was stored in the public web root, not outside. So what I did, I put the version number and the name of the application into Google and found a list of sites using it. Then I put in the name of the Access database and downloaded it. Within about, I think, the third one, I had a list of over 1,000 credit card details and numbers. So it's important, if you're auditing web apps or you make web apps, make sure the databases or password files or anything important is outside the web root. Use a DSN connection if it's Access or something to access it. Don't put it in the web root. Don't rely on security through obscurity. That's basically what that is. Just because you think people don't know about it doesn't mean they don't know about it. Someone's going to notice there's something wrong. And try and conduct these tests, use these tools on your own websites and domains, on your own companies. See how much information you can gather yourself. If you can gather that much, there's probably someone else that can gather more. So if what you find worries you, then obviously you have to do something about it. So conclusion is, information gathering is important. It's often overlooked, and it's an area not a lot of people are using fully. So it is something people should be aware of, and as I mentioned earlier, and I'd like to highlight again, there's no way you can know people are doing this. It's completely stealth. There's no connections to your website, there's no logs, there's no traces. So be aware of what your company or organisation has available on the web. Try and find out everything you can, and then you can work out what should be there and what shouldn't be there. This presentation will be available afterwards, so you can go through it, check out the tools, some of the techniques discussed, check out the Google hacking database and try out some of these things yourself. Okay, any questions? Okay, I think I'll just check if the web's still working. I've got Athena running here, so so you can see I showed in the presentation, there's the list's a lot bigger than Sitedigger of all the queries here, but these will do general queries, not refined. You can run them on a specific site, but it's very time consuming to run each query on one site. So this is best for finding general misconfigurations. So let me see. It's actually quite good as well. It gives you a small piece of information about what each Google hack does. So let's have a look at this one. For example, this is using a string generated by Nessus, the security scanner, when you do a scan. So basically, if you can find this report on someone's site, you don't have to run a Nessus scan, because they've run it for you and put the report on the web. So as you can see, there's 191. The first two are the Google hacking database. After that is a whole bunch of sites which have run Google reports, Nessus reports, and put them on the web. So as you can see here, these ones even disclose the internal IP addressing scheme of the company, and it will give you all the security warnings and vulnerabilities for these machines. So this is the kind of stuff that people put on web pages so they can access, but they don't realize everyone else can access it as well, and they've just saved me running a Nessus scan on their site. If you check the Google hacking database regularly, these things are being added every day. So keep up to date with it, and there's a lot of information that can be found. Okay, that's the end.